I want to welcome you to Fearlessly Authentic. This is the show where we educate you, empower you with that education, maybe entertain you a little bit, depending on who's on the show, and inspire you to live your most fearlessly authentic life. Because, in my opinion, what are we doing here if we're not being our most fearlessly authentic people, ourselves, and being true to ourselves and living our life with courage? Because for so many years, I didn't. I was trying to be something that other people wanted me to be. And if you've done that yourself, you know that it doesn't bring you much happiness or joy or fulfillment. So that is why we are here on Fearlessly Authentic, so I can help you be that person. I want to remind you, if you are a first-time listener, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. This is kind of a funny story. I was with my daughter for the last couple of days, and we were talking about the podcast, and she said to me, Mom, if you listen to your show, it's a long reason why we were talking. Yeah, a long reason why we were talking about this. But she said, if you listen to the show and you don't download it, then you're not subscribed. So I don't know how many of you knew that, probably most of you, but I did not know that. So if you listen to my show and you love it and you're sharing it with your friends, please remember to download it and subscribe, and just press that little subscribe button. And then you get to hear all the episodes every single week. I have a new episode, and I have been doing the show. It will be 4 years in the spring. And it has just been a wonderful, wonderful way for me to help everybody who listens grow, as well as myself, because I know that if I'm growing, you're growing. And I really appreciate all the love and listening to the show and sharing it with all of your friends. So this show today is going to be about saying no. It's probably been one of the hardest things for me to do my whole life, going back to being fearlessly authentic. Because saying no when you are, let's just call me, I used to be a people pleaser, and we've all heard that word being used over and over again. And I don't like to use it all the time because people use it all the time. But yeah, that used to be me, and I used to feel that if I made sure that everybody around me was really, really happy, then I would be happy. And then all of a sudden one day, I realized that, saying no, saying yes to everybody is not making me happy, but I didn't have the guts to say no. And I didn't want to disappoint anyone. And I'm sure that you can relate to some of that, um, especially if you are a regular listener to the show and you've heard my stories. It's very hard for some of us to say no when we're used to saying yes to everything, and then sort of, just tucking it away and thinking that maybe one day I will actually be able to say no, or when I say yes, I really mean it. And that's not to say that I didn't say yes when I meant yes, but there were many times that I said no. See, I keep confusing that because I'm on a no era right now. When I wanted to say no and I just didn't have the guts to do it, and it always made me really, really sad. And I think that has a lot to do with confidence, and it has a lot to do with stepping into your power, your strength, your true, authentic self. And I don't think that back in my 30s and early 40s, I was ready to do that. And for those of you who are listening for the very first time, I will give you just a little bit of background on me. I got married at 25. I was married for 17 years. I have two beautiful daughters. And at 42, I decided to get divorced from being in a relationship that just I you know, back then we didn't say these things, but I realize now, as we talk more about things more openly because of the internet, which has been around for a long time, I understand that, but it wasn't around really back when I was in my 30s and 40s. And people weren't sharing. There was no Instagram. There was no social media, basically. And, there was really no place to gather information and understand things. And now people talk so openly about their feelings. And I love that. Sometimes it's too much sharing, but I think most of us can benefit when we know that we're listening to the right people for us, because we do get very overwhelmed with information. And one of the things that I like about my show is that I bring on experts, and I only talk on these shows in my solo episodes when I can bring you the value of my experiences, what I've learned, what I teach other people, and how it can benefit you. So, in telling you my backstory, it's just to explain to you where I've come and where I am now. And so, in my marriage, I as I reflect back now, and, a while ago, I was aware of it, I wasn't being seen or heard. And that made me feel really bad. And because I stopped working and earning an income when I had our oldest daughter in 1989, I lost my power of, before I had my own money, now it was just my husband's money, and I had to ask for things, and I hated that. And the hard thing about my relationship, and I'm sure there are still women who can very much relate, even though we've come a long way, baby, is that I had to ask for the money. I had to feel bad when I spent money, if I spent more money, and I would try to hide it. So there was all these feelings of shame and guilt. Yet I knew it was the wrong thing to do, and I didn't want my children watching me and doing the same thing, and especially because they were girls. And I wanted them to learn the right things. So for all of those, without getting into all of the details into my marriage, but the gist of it was that I just didn't feel seen or heard, because it was almost as if my feelings didn't matter, and things that I needed to have happen for our family didn't happen. And he was a great provider, all those good things, that the things that were important to me didn't matter because I didn't have a quote unquote say, because I didn't make any money. So I wasn't allowed to work. So I was involved in lots of volunteer work, and it was fulfilling, but not as much, because it gave me some sense of value, but I didn't really sense of independence, because I can speak and people were listening and I was training women, but it was still not the same. And the only way I thought that I could start breathing again, that I could come up out of the water and catch my breath and feel seen and heard and be that strong role model for my daughters, was to leave the relationship. There was no other way out. No other way out. We tried counseling and it just didn't work. And again, for those of you listening, I'm sure you can relate to when things aren't working in a relationship, and when you try and the other person doesn't really try. So I had to get out, and I did, and then I started from rock bottom. I had to start figuring out who I wanted to be, how I was going to make money, what kind of future did I see for myself, and what kind of role model I needed to be for my daughters. I knew this from the day they were born, but now that I was a single mom, I knew that I had to dig deep. And that's when I really started doing a lot of work on myself. And I was left without a lot of friends. And really, in my 40s, it was about starting all over again. And it took a lot of guts, and it was really hard. And everybody told me I was dumb for leaving the relationship. But that was my first step into saying, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. This relationship's not for me anymore. It is going to be the hardest thing I ever do. I'm going to have to go through a divorce. I'm going to feel shame. I'm going to feel guilt. But for some reason, I knew that everything waiting for me and my daughters, as me being a better role model for them, just not to see, oh, my mom, who's your mom? Oh, my mom goes shopping and goes out for dinner and out for lunch. Ew, I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to show them the depth that I had. And the only way to do it was to break the chains that bound me in that relationship and move forward. And it was really, really hard, but I learned to do it. And again, that was the first time that I took such a big stand and stood up for myself and said, no, Jody, you're not going to do this anymore. So if any of you listening right now, and we're getting to the end of the year, and thinking about all the things that we've done, that we've accomplished, that we want to change for 2024, if saying no is going to start changing your life in the direction that you need it to be your most fearlessly authentic person, I want you to really think about that and think about if this is what you really want, and stop doubting yourself. Listen to your gut. Don't listen to all of the other voices. Listen to your gut. It will bring you the truth, because we have that fight between our heart, our head, and our gut. And if you listen to your gut, it's going to push you in the right direction. So when we come back from this break, we're going to get into all of the things that you can do to start trusting your gut and how you have the power to say no. Stay with me. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. We are talking about saying no this year and how empowering it is, and how empowering it was to me when I did that 21, 22 years ago. So I want to get into why saying no is so empowering. It's empowering because it establishes boundaries, it prioritizes self-care, and allows you to focus on what truly matters to you. It is a declaration of your values, giving you control over your time and energy. Think about that. If you are listening to this show and you are having a hard time saying no, think about why you're having a hard time saying no. Can you relate to my story at all? I'm sure there are so many of you that can relate, not specifically to mine with marriage and divorce, but breakups and maybe at work and in business. Because it's all about relationships and how you feel about yourself also. And as I said at the beginning, that a lot of that had to do with my lack of confidence. And so the first thing that saying no is empowering to is about, and how you can do it, is by establishing boundaries. By saying no, you're defining your limits. You're preventing others from overstepping, right? And helping you to maintain a healthy balance in your life. So think about all the times that you have tried to set boundaries. Let's say it's an argument with somebody, or somebody needs to tell you how they feel, and you're saying, you know what, I don't want to hear this. Or I want to break up with this person, or I want to leave this job and do something else. And everybody around you is saying, no, don't do it. You have to establish that boundary. Say, I don't really want to hear what you have to say. You don't have to say it like that, but I prefer that I don't, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I want to do. I appreciate you suggesting these things to me. But inside you're saying, no, I don't want to hear it, because I know what I want to do and I'm setting up those boundaries. I don't want to be around those people. I don't want to be married to this person. I don't want to be friends with that person anymore. And that reminds me of another situation that happened when it was after I got divorced, and I was still friendly, peripherally sort of friendly with a lot of the women that I was friendly with in my marriage. And we had like a ladies' luncheon group. And we had gone out for dinner. I'll never forget this. We had gone out for dinner, and I had gotten implants, breast implants, maybe a year after my divorce. And we went out with a bunch of the girls, and I was very different from a lot of them. I was the only one who worked out. I'm the only one who got divorced. I was the only one who had implants, blah, blah, blah. And I took off my jacket, and one of the girls said, "Again with the boobs?" And like, let me tell you guys, they were not big boobs. And I went to the bathroom crying because it made me feel uncomfortable. She was mean about it. She was making me the center of the conversation, and I didn't want to be. And I kept going out with this group after I was divorced, and I knew they were talking about me. And I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking, Jody, why did you keep going out with these ladies if they were talking about you behind your back and not always saying the most favorable things in the world? And then you had mean ones. It didn't sound like you had anybody who supported you in your dating life and your new being a single mom life and raising these two girls. I don't know. Well, I do know. I was insecure, and I was holding on to what I thought were my friends when they weren't my friends. And so I ran to the bathroom crying, and two of the other girls came after me. There were like 7 or 8 women. And it was after that that I decided that I wasn't going to be friends with them anymore. And I had to say no. I had to say no to leaving, to not being friends with them. I had to say goodbye to a part of my life. So saying no to me is like the same thing as saying goodbye to something. I'm saying no to this. No, I don't want to be. They were basically verbally abusing me. I'm saying no to any more verbal abuse. I'm saying no to somebody taking advantage of how nice I am. I'm saying no that I do not want to be friends with these women anymore because they do not support me. We are no longer aligned. We are no longer friends. We are not the same people anymore. And we do not have anything in common anymore because they were not my friends. Once my marital status changed, they did not want to be friends with me anymore. And so I said no to being friends with those ladies. And that, again, was really, really hard for me. But every single time you say no, you are going to get stronger. And I want you to really, really believe in yourself. It's not a fake no, like no, 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 no to whatever you want to say no to, but it's no to things that don't make you feel good. No, I don't want to go out to this restaurant. That's a really superficial thing, but it's more about relationships. No, this relationship doesn't serve me. No, going on this podcast isn't aligned with the things that I want. No to going out with certain people. And I find that as women, we tend to, overall, generally speaking, we want to say yes. We want to be included. We want to do everything because it feels good to say yes. But sometimes the hardest things that we do are the things that are going to propel us to that fearlessly authentic person. We don't even know yet because I had no idea who I wanted to be, except I wanted to be the best mom in the world. That was my only goal. That's all I ever really knew. I was a great volunteer. I was president of a group in my town, part of a national, a global group. And that was very fulfilling. But my biggest quote unquote job was to be the best mom that I could be. And having that negativity in my life from these ladies was distracting from the things that I wanted to do. So by saying no, I established boundaries. I'm not going to take your shit anymore. And by also doing that, I was prioritizing my own self-care. This doesn't feel good to me. It helped me to prioritize my own well-being and allocating that time for personal growth and self-care. Because while I was with these women, I wasn't taking good care of myself mentally. It wasn't good for me. And it took me about 4 or 5 years for me to finally remove myself from that group. But you know what? I felt free. I felt sad because I was disappointed by them, but I felt free. It also helped to preserve my energy. So by saying no, you're establishing boundaries, you're prioritizing self-care, and you're preserving your energy. I didn't feel that I didn't have to put up this tough exterior. I didn't have to be something that I wasn't and had to be something that they wanted me to do. I didn't have to go out. So by declining the activity of going out with them, which didn't align with me anymore or my values, I was conserving that energy to do other things, to take better care of myself, to spend more time with my daughters, to be home. I was always home with them. Um, but why go out with those ladies who were toxic when I could be home with my girls, right? Or I could be taking a course, or I could be working out, or I could be cooking. Well, I don't really cook. Or I could do something that makes me feel good to help me grow more as a woman. And by also saying no, I was honoring my own values. It was a declaration of my values. I don't align with you ladies anymore. I don't see us on the same levels anymore. I don't believe in what you have to say, and I don't like the conversations that you're having. It doesn't align with the woman that I want to become. And again, declining my time to be with these women gave me more time to contribute toward personal growth and professional growth. I was also trying to figure out how I could launch my personal training business to be even bigger. Because before that, I was doing it on the side. I was training women on the side because I was a full-time stay-at-home mom. But now my girls were in school. I was a single mom, and their dad and I knew the timing of when they were all, when they were with him, when they were with me. So saying no empowered me to shape my life in alignment with my goals and values, with your goals and values. For everybody listening at home right now, you say no because when you say no, you're taking care of yourself. You're establishing those boundaries so you don't hurt yourself anymore. No more hurt, right? You're taking care of yourself. You want to grow as a human being, professionally and personally. And when things no longer serve you, you have to say no. And that was one of the examples that I remember from over 20 years ago of saying no. And even in my professional life, which I will share more about when we come back from the break, saying no gets harder as the stakes get higher, right? I thought the stakes were big back then, but then as you get into business and you have to say no, it gets even harder. So we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about more of the reasons that you should say no and some of the things that I've gone through that I hope that I can help you get through to say no and make the new year the best year ever. Stay with me. We'll be right back. Thank you for waiting past that commercial and staying with the show. This is something that really, I'm sure you can hear it in my voice, really is very close to me because I had such a hard time saying no. And as we talk about this show, Fearlessly Authentic, which again, the name came to me because it was always hard for me to say no. It was always hard for me to trust my gut. It was always hard for me to stand in my truth until I did in my 40s. And that is when I started feeling more empowered. And saying no also enhances authenticity and well-being. As I mentioned, the well-being, the self-care, setting boundaries, and so on. And what I realized was that saying no is somewhat of a skill. And it goes back to um, everything that I was talking about in the first two segments, and that confidence. It starts the more you say no, the more confidence you will feel. Because saying no can feel uncomfortable initially and more familiar over time. And I think that has to do with the fact that you become more confident in what you want to say no to and what you feel really, really good in saying yes to. Again, saying no supports well being. If it creates authenticity and it aligns with your personal values and maintains a healthy mind. So when I was talking about being in that group with the ladies, it didn't give me a healthy mind. It made me feel really crappy about myself. It made me feel like every single time I went out for lunch or dinner with them, I had to be somebody that they thought I was, the woman I was in my marriage. And because I wasn't showing up like her anymore, they didn't like that. And people have a really hard time with change. So saying yes, we all have a lot of practice saying yes to things and taking on more and more. And it's related to a lot of factors, as I mentioned at the beginning, of being a people pleaser, or concerned about what other people's perceptions are of you. And I think with the women that I was friendly with, it was that I wanted to continue that perception of who I was until I realized, no, I don't want to be her anymore. I'm not going to be her, and I'm not going to be the woman that they think they want me to be. So I had to work on that skill, and it was really hard because if I had some type of opportunity coming up and I had to say no to, because I remember there was a great job in as a personal trainer, but I had to be there at 5:30 in the morning, which meant that I had to leave my daughter because my oldest daughter was off in school and college already, and I had to leave my youngest daughter. I had to leave at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm not a morning person. And I said yes to it because I really, really wanted to work in this particular gym. And I did it for about a month. And then I said, this doesn't serve me. It doesn't make a difference how much money you're going to get paid or even the people you're going to meet. If it's not serving you, if it's not aligning with your values, and my value was that I wanted to be home to say goodbye to my daughter when she left for school. Now she was driving already. She wasn't a baby. She was 16 years, 17 years old, but that was my value. I wanted to be home for her. And I could say no to that job, saying no. I didn't want her getting up in the early in the morning and not having me be there. She had 2 more years left of high school. I wanted to be there for her. And you're saying no to the request. The request was for me to be an hour away at 5:30 in the morning. And every single time I practiced saying no, I realized that people are still going to like me. They're probably going to respect me more for saying no. You don't have to give a reason. If somebody asks you for the reason, you can be completely honest. But every single time you say no, you become more confident. It's like it's the same thing as stepping outside of your comfort zone, right? Every single time you do something you're not comfortable with, but you know it's for the better good of you as a human being, you do it. I just filmed about 10 fitness videos the last 2 days for something very exciting that's going to be coming up that I can't wait to share with all of you. And one of the things that I talked about on the videos was about stepping outside of your comfort zone. And that is where we find our strength. It's through the struggles that we find our strengths. And it's the same thing in you and in me practicing saying no. And you can say no and be kind. You can thank someone for thinking of you and extending an invitation or making a request and still say no. So many times people think saying no means they are being disrespectful or mean. This isn't true. It's possible for us to communicate directly and respectfully. So the next time, maybe it's a holiday party. And, a few weeks ago, I had Dr. Jen Mann on the show, and we talked about saying no to things that don't serve us well around the holiday season, because the topic of the show was how to uh, maintain um, a good mindset during the holidays, how to deal with stress and anxiety and emotional eating. So, if that's something you're dealing with right now, it's a great episode from 2 weeks ago. And she talked about you don't have to be mean to say no, you can be very respectful. And if you know that there are certain requests or situations you plan to say no to, it can be helpful to let other people know ahead of time, right? If you're invited to a party, whether it's a holiday party or not, you can say, hey, I'm not going to be there. And they should respect that. If they are your friend, they will respect that. You're not being mean. And if they aren't respecting it, then maybe we need to think about whether or not you want to keep this person in your life. And it's okay to miss out on things. I know a lot of people have FOMO, fear of missing out. Um, that's not something I really struggled with, but I want you to think about these things when you want to say no and realize that you are serving yourself in your best interest mentally, healthfully, to say no. And it's okay to teach your friends and your children to say no with all the respect. And often we hesitate to say no because we're fearful of missing out. But remember, when you practice saying no to something, you're always saying yes to your priorities and values. And typically we focus on what we might be missing out. And I want you to remind yourself that what you're going to gain by saying no, right? How many times have you gone somewhere or even gone on a date with somebody that you didn't want to go on a date with? You said yes because you thought, what the heck, I'm going to just do it. You don't have to. And by saying no, it's not easy. But I want you to think about embracing your vulnerability. So, again, going back to the name of the show, practicing courage, practicing authenticity, part of being authentic is embracing your vulnerability. And I had a hard time embracing my vulnerability because I wanted to be so strong. I wanted the women in that group to think that I had my act together after the divorce. I wanted them to think that I'm still the same Jody with my act together. And I was, but my goals were different now. I didn't have time to go out for lunch and chit chat about bullshit. I had crap to do. So saying no is hard. It makes us feel vulnerable as we worry about letting someone else down or thinking about it that are we going to be criticized for it? But remember that embracing vulnerability allows us to honor ourselves and helps build courage, fearlessly authentic. And that's why I always open up the show saying that if we're not living our most fearlessly authentic selves, then what the heck are we doing here? Because as the stories I've shared with you, and that's just a snippet, you guys, of the things that I've dealt with and had to eventually say no. But I didn't know back then, 20 years ago, that those things didn't align with me. I didn't know those things because I was just starting to work on myself, because for all of those years leading up to me being in my 40s, I was saying yes to everything. Courage isn't about not feeling anxious or uneasy, right? Think about the things that you had to do: ask for a raise, leave a relationship, go on a trip by yourself. Think about all the things, move to a new city by yourself. All of the things that you had to do that were outside of your comfort zone took courage. And so courage isn't about not feeling anxious or uneasy. You are going to feel a little anxious and uneasy. It's about feeling these emotions and taking the action anyway. That's what vulnerability is about. And I want you to embrace it. It's scary. So, one of the things that I was super authentic about this year, and it wasn't about a no thing because I've gotten very good at saying no, but there are still people I have a hard time saying no to, like my daughters. And I've even gotten better at saying no. And I have a wonderful relationship with them. But there were times where I was like, no, I'm not going to hear you talk like this to me, or no, I don't need to hear this right now. Not in a mean way, but very respectful. I was setting boundaries. My daughters set boundaries. They've learned from me, they've learned from their friends, they learned from being in therapy, but you learn these things about yourself. And you've got to take care of yourself, whether it's with your own family. And we know families definitely do a job on us, right? So back in November, if you've been listening to the show or following me on social media, Jody Harrison Bauer on all social media platforms, that's where you can find me. I had a tummy tuck last November of 2022. And I wasn't going to share it with anybody. I was just going to go on my merry way and not share it. And, there wasn't anybody in my life who said, Jody, you should really share this. You should really share. Because I wasn't even telling some of my friends that I did it. I was just, going along and living my life. And I felt so good after it. And I felt so much better about myself, more confident, even though, I've worked out my whole life and eat healthy all the time and have been in fitness for over 40 years. This was something, and if you want to listen to the show, I posted it just recently again, but back in February and in March, and I interview my surgeon also. And I don't want to get into all the details of it because I want to stick to the topic we have today. Nobody was saying, Jody, you should share this. And I said, no. It was me having that conversation with myself. I want to share it. No, I want to share it. No, what are people going to think of me? No, 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 no. And then finally I said, damn it. I feel so good about myself that I want to share this with my audience on my show, on my social media platforms, because I want to help other people. So it wasn't a matter of saying no, it was a matter of saying yes. Yes to something that makes me a little scared to share. Yes to something that might give me negative feedback. Saying, no, I'm not going to worry about what other people are going to say and how I'm going to be judged. I said no to the haters, no to the judgers, no to the Karens, and yes to me. Yes to helping other women. Yes to education about tummy tucks. Yes about education about getting older, skin laxity, going through menopause, being a postmenopausal woman. Those things we have to deal with. And it was the beginning of the floodgates opening. And I've always been as authentic as I could be on this show and on social media. But I was really getting deep, you guys. I was sharing something so personal. And it was the most gratifying thing that I did because so many women shared their story with me. And it was so fulfilling, so gratifying that guess what? I wanted to do it again and again. Not the tummy tuck over again and again, but me saying no to being scared. No, Jody, don't be scared. And yes, to sharing something where I had to be very vulnerable and therefore being more authentic with you and to my followers. And again, just to repeat this, saying no requires practice. And that's what I've been doing for the past 20 plus years is saying no more often to things that don't align with what I want to do. And therefore, I don't feel more anxiety. I don't feel more stressed out by saying no. And I also started to practice saying no without apologizing. How many of you say no and then apologize for it? And if you could hear my dog scratching her leg right now, I apologize, but she decided to walk in this room and scratch her legs, and I'm not going to do anything about it right now. And remember, by saying no, you've done nothing wrong. So stop apologizing. Just know, again, that this doesn't align with who you are and with your values. A few other things that I started being more vulnerable about and saying yes to me because I knew it could serve you better. So I had to be brave. I had to be fearlessly authentic, was sharing more about being a postmenopausal woman. And when I was invited to networking events that had more men than women that aligned with my goals and my values, I had to say no. And I had to say no because it wasn't me anymore. It's not that I didn't appreciate what I had and what I did with those people, but it wasn't aligning with where I am now because I fully have stepped into my truth. It not 100%. I'm always going to step deeper and deeper and deeper. And back in May, I got really sick with salmonella food poisoning. I did share a little bit about this, not the details of it. You do not want to know the details of it. And I was in the hospital for 4 days on morphine, on antibiotics. It was terrible. It was really terrible for anybody who's gone through it. I know the feeling. And I still don't eat the same way. Everything sort of changed, but I remember lying in the hospital bed, starting to feel better, and hadn't posted anything on Instagram for a while, for a couple of days, of course, because I was sick. Um, and I posted something with a video that I had created a couple of months prior about being 12 years postmenopausal because I went through menopause when I was 50. And that video went viral with, I think it was 26 million people viewed it. And I think it was something like, I don't even know what it's up to now, maybe 800,000 likes and comments. I don't remember the numbers, but they were insane. I kept looking at it and thinking, why is this resonating? And it was because I was saying no to being scared and yes to being myself. So I want you to think about that. Say no to the things and to the people that don't align with you. And you'll find that organically, as you grow as a person and you get used to saying no to things that don't align with who you are and what you want to do, that the people that you want to attract into your life, who you want in your circle, and who you are the most authentic with and who you can grow with are the people that you're going to say yes to. They're just going to organically come into your life. You won't even understand why it's happening. I'm telling you. I know this sounds a little woo-woo for me, but it's exactly how the universe works. It's going back to the ladies in that group. It's almost like the universe said to me, Jody, wake up. These ladies are not your friends. They don't care about what you're doing. They're talking about you in a very mean way behind your back. They're not your friends. And I needed that one woman to make that one nasty comment to me to go, click, the light went off. I say no to that. Click. I don't want to be involved in this group anymore when it comes to business or networking or something like that, because that's who I was 3 years ago. That's not who I am now, because you get clearer and clearer every single time you say no. The first couple times it's scary, but you said no to being scared and yes to your mental health, right? And you stand stronger and stronger in your truth. You become more fearless and you become more authentic. So I've done a few things this year that I promised myself I was going to do, and I'm going to talk more about these things next week. But I started writing a book, rewriting a book, a revision on a book, but making it more aligned with who I am right now. And that was scary. And I said, stop being scared to do this, Jody. Say yes to doing it. Be vulnerable. Open yourself up to being vulnerable and learning. And I love to learn. And I want to share what I learn to help you live your most fearlessly authentic life. Because if we're not living our most authentic life and we're not living with courage, then what the heck are we doing here? I want you to think about saying no to the things that don't serve you. Sit still with those things. Think about, why did I just have this conversation with somebody and it didn't make me feel good? Or why did I just hang up from a call or a Zoom call and that didn't make me feel good anymore? Well, maybe that person isn't your person anymore. And with respect for yourself and to that person, you say no more. You just simply say, I'm not going to do this anymore. So I want to thank you all for saying yes and listening to this episode of Fearlessly Authentic today. I really appreciate you. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And until next week, go stand in your power and go live your most fearlessly authentic life. And Merry Christmas to everybody. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.